I'm Tricia Perry, and this is Vision of the Valley. If you've ever been to Columbiana, you probably remember a lovely town circle with many little shops and quaint restaurants. But that circle is actually the town square of a village that's been here since 1802. Hello.
Come on in.
Anybody home?
Welcome.
Hi. You must be Debbie.
I am Debbie Himes. I am one of the archivists for the
Nice to meet you.
Historical Society of Columbiana and Fairfield Township. Welcome to the log house.
I have to say, I have been to Columbiana all my life. I have seen this log house and I've never been in it. So this is so charming. Was it always here?
No, this cabin was built approximately the same time as the original cabin that was here in 1820, but this was down on Railroad Street when the American Bicentennial Commission wanted every town to celebrate their heritage. Of course, most villages put a log cabin on the square or in the circle, and we did the same. The land originally had a cabin here, and cabins everywhere dotted the square.
Yeah, that was a long time ago because this town started in what year?
1805.
1805, oh my gosh. So you've already celebrated your 200th.
Yes.
And you have all of this and much more that's preserved, right?
Correct.
Tell me about this log cabin though, what's in it though? What did you put in it when you got it here?
Most everything in here has come from some particular family in town or something donated, which if you look up at the coverlets, the
Beautiful.
dot there.
Oh my goodness.
The coverlets, they're woven and they do say Columbiana in them. They have the weaver's name. The quilts, of course, were all quilts that different people from Columbiana quilted in the year. So a lot of them were, very little of this has been something that we went out and bought. It was donated by a resident of Columbiana. There's 3 archivists in the basement. We're here Tuesday morning to answer questions, to do research, to catalog what comes in, and preserve the history of Columbiana.
That's beautiful. All of these things are just lovely. I can tell they're old. I love how you can see all the beams. You can see all of the beams around the walls. And it's probably pretty much the way it was laid out, right? This would have been the living space and the bedrooms upstairs.
The bedrooms
the sleeping
upstairs,
area,
right.
I guess you should say,
And,
because they're not really bedrooms.
Yeah, there are no bedrooms. There is no bathroom. The chamber pot is upstairs.
Yikes.
But it is basically the whole family would have lived upstairs.
Let's go into this room. I want to see what's in here.
Okay.
What's this room?
Well, this would have been the family
Eating area?
quarters.
Or
No, homework would have been done here, the cooking, the eating. Could
Like
have
a
been
kitchen.
sleeping. Yes, you've
Kind of
got
like
your
the
kitchen,
kitchen.
living room. It's the great room of the 1800s.
wow.
Okay.
And it's small.
It's small.
And there might have been six or eight people in here, right?
Yes, and over the years they would have updated a little bit, hence the tin ceiling.
Yes. Which to me seems ancient, but yes, that would have been not in the everyday log cabin. There would not have been a tin ceiling.
No. Chairs would have hung on the walls because the room would have been needed, whether it had a quilting frame in there for the mother to quilt and the daughters. If they were going to be putting up harvest between outside and inside, it was done. Prized possessions, which are everyday items, would have been in close reach.
And you were telling me you learned something from visitors here. You can visit certain days of the week, right?
Right.
But you learned something from visitors, like the walls and what was used on the walls. Tell me that story.
We had a gentleman in here 2 weeks ago. They were from West Virginia, and you know how barn builders on TV has been a big thing, and we've actually had them come tear down barns here in this area. And he informed me that an axe downstairs was mislabeled, and it should have been an adze. And I just looked at him like,
what does that mean?
I have no clue. And so he proceeded to bring the axe upstairs and explain to us what all the markings were on the wall.
So
he said, you know, your log is not your log's round when it comes cut down from the tree, so then you have to square it up. So these would be the axe that would have made the marks, and then this particular axe, which has got an odd handle, come down and it's sliced off the round piece and made the log square.
And there's a tool just for that.
And there's a tool just for that.
And you just learned this a little while ago.
Yes,
you learn something new all the time.
Say it wasn't anything I needed to know, but now I need to know so that when we have our third graders coming in from the area schools, I won't scare them with the axe, but
yes,
we can show them.
Well, and you know, people think history is static and it's old and it's yesterday, but then here you are finding out something new not too long ago.
Right, and history just repurposes itself, and sometimes the old was the better way, and that especially somebody that wants to preserve it or wants to do it historically correct.
There's another addition here, and as we get to it, there's this. This
Correct.
is like you said, you stuff everything everywhere, right?
Yes,
so
we
you found
do.
a spot for the historic cheerleading uniforms of the Clippers, right?
Correct. And these were donated by a family that all their daughters were cheerleaders back in the day, and
wow,
the mothers had to make the uniforms.
That's really nice work.
Of course,
actually,
my favorite is the red and white stripe,
like a candy striper.
Yes, yes. So they had their fall outfits and their
summer
basketball.
And you have instruments, and you have
Our
Clippers,
Clipper annuals.
Yeah.
Downstairs we have annuals back to 1917.
Oh wow.
So we're always happy to receive something that gives us a little bit more history than what we know.
Well, this town has always been very historic, and everybody knows everybody, and you've all been here a long time. That's my impression of it, living not too far away.
Correct,
So-
and watch what you say because we're generally related to them in some way.
Right. So then through here, you have an annex where you have more historic artifacts. Oh my goodness, the costumes.
Correct, and every 2 years we change the center primarily, and we are now currently into the last 100 years of 2019 to 1919. We're coming back to the coming home from the war, World War I,
Nice.
and the most important thing that happened to us, of course, was the convoy that passed through with a young Lieutenant Colonel Ike Eisenhower.
Oh, came through then.
Yes.
Oh my.
Yes. So it was, and they stopped here.
See, let's go over here.
And Harvey S. Firestone, Mr. Firestone, who was born and raised here in Columbiana, one of the founding families of Fairfield Township.
So he
And-
came through after World War I.
Yes, it was an expeditionary convoy that was, they had, during World War I, the German Autobahn, the roads in Germany, how fast things moved, and they wanted to see what would happen with going across the country for a long trek with the government. Mr. Firestone brought them all that weekend for a dinner at the homestead out at 7 and 14, the Grace Church ladies, which my great-grandmother was one, cooked chicken dinner. They were known for their chicken dinners and served 258
Wow.
dinners.
So over your shoulder,
glory.
I'm looking at these dresses. I got to go right there next because
Oh,
these
right.
are beautiful.
Well, we chose the 20s. It was a great
Yeah,
period
look
of
at
time.
them. Now these are all from women
These
in
are all
town.
from
that,
Columbiana. Yes.
oh
yes.
my gosh, how gorgeous!
An attic upstairs, and quite charming. And they would have come into town or dressed for an occasion here. You know.
Where were they all these years? They're not even remotely,
Right.
damaged.
What we took down before you would have enjoyed were wedding dresses from the ladies of Columbiana
Oh,
and
that's
Fairfield
so
Township.
nice.
Our oldest one had been from Ireland, and Jay Groaner, who you'll talk to later, it was his great-grandmother's, and we brought the great-great-granddaughters in, and they had the dress on and a sitting for the grandpa for Christmas.
Oh.
So we try to do cool things.
It's saying here they were in corners, like to keep witches at a distance, in dark corners. That's I
Yes.
never heard that about. I wondered about gazing balls and what they were, what is the purpose of them, but I never actually have seen any like that, and that's pretty cool.
Well, it was an inexpensive way to decorate your home, and you would have found them in the 5 and dimes. The general store would have had them.
People really took care of their historic artifacts here in Columbiana.
Yes, they
because
did.
These things are in very wonderful condition. And you said you have something here about this is industry?
Here, the industry of Columbiana, we feature some of the local industry. Columbiana at one time was the largest employer in the county with National Rubber Machinery.
wow.
They made tire machines.
Oh, wow.
So of course, because of Harvey S. Firestone, we would
Sure,
have a
yeah,
tire
that would make
industry.
sense. I want to say that this is a small building, or 2 buildings, and yet it has so much in it, very diverse. It's like you're small but mighty.
Oh yes, and I would love to see us have more space because there's so many more treasures and that we have, but we can't,
Someday maybe.
can't display. So we do rotate the display, and we're very fortunate that people that live in Columbiana and even people that families have moved away, they think of us and they send it back. We received 2 collections this year. We brought out the table. The first collection that came, and we thought we were so fortunate, was a World War I drum used by
my
Mr.
gosh.
Hess. Love it. Well, it had to be relegated because of space.
Sure.
When 2 weeks ago, the Crook and Knoll family decided that this needed a new home, and it was their ancestor Thomas Crook, and his hat, his discharge
is-
papers, his photos, and we just love it.
This is the Civil War.
Yes, the
Yes.
Civil War. We're real big because we had Brigadier General Holloway, we had General Kugel. We had lots of military men from Columbiana.
So you really fit a lot into this small space.
Yes,
it's
we
just
do.
a little log cabin and an annex, but you have a lot of history in here, and you have a lot of history out there.
Correct,
So
we do.
we need to go
Shall
out
we
there.
go out?
have our maps of the square. We got them, and we're ready. And who are we meeting right here?
We are meeting local Columbiana historian Jay Groaner.
Hello.
Retired city services director. He knows this city from top to bottom, including underneath the streets.
Well, and you know, and every historic town needs to have someone like you and you that remembers things. So you have to be thinking, like, after you, who's going to be next? Because it could be lost. It could be lost if you don't keep track of everything like you're doing.
And it's the membership is old. I work with 2 retired ladies, and we were fortunate this spring to get a young 30-something Michelle, who is tech savvy, and she has managed to take a 4-year backlog of cataloging and database it, and we're up to, what is it, I think August of 2018. So we're really fortunate that when a young one comes, we really do swoop in on them.
Well, let me ask you, let's walk closer to the street, because every part of this circle, which I've always thought of as a circle, is a square that has an important building, right? Let's walk to the street and look at it. So the log cabin is one corner.
Correct.
The Historical Society is one corner. And that's pretty much been sort of what this has looked like for a long time. There was a cabin here, you said, right?
There was a cabin, and then a large building was built, which was Stock Harry's offices, and a smaller building which housed was the first post office in Columbiana. It became the Ledger printing office, which was one of our old newspapers. The Independent Ledger was printed here. And then in 1975, we tear both of them down when the Bookwalter family donates the ground, and the Barrow family donated our log cabin.
Okay, so then across the way, I've been familiar with the theater since I was a kid, because I didn't live too far away and would come to the theater. But that blue-sided building was a store, right? Tell me, why don't you tell me a little bit about the history of that as a store?
When the city was founded in 1805 and 1808, a log cabin was put up over there by Mr. Peter Baker, and he ran a general store out of it, who sold it to Jesse Allen then around 1820. That became our second post office when the mail was brought in by stagecoach at that time. It was an upgrade. Wow. Originally it was just horseback. That has served as a general store. Since then, his son in 1841 built the blue building, which is on the outside facade of a brick building that he built in 1841. Has served as a general store. Part of it as a bank. Our first bank was in there, Hollis and Kemble, and then made in the early 1900s into apartments. And a bunch of eclectic things have happened over years in there. In 1910, they found a still in the basement.
Oh, great!
That was actually before Prohibition, but I don't think there are any remnants of it left yet. The theater that you mentioned is kind of a late come. In 1953, it was built by George Mannis, who bought the Globe Theater that was located a couple blocks south on Main Street. And he built this as a modern theater with great sound and a huge picture. There wasn't room on South Main Street to expand at all. He ran that, Mr. Mannis ran it as a Mannis Theater until his death, and then it became the cinema. In 2007, husband and wife, Don and Don Arthurs, bought it, remodeled it, and it's become the Main Street Theater.
Yeah, it's wonderful, because you see so many things like this going by the wayside in American towns that are small like this and historic, and that is still there and going strong.
With their Crown productions and stage productions they do, it's no longer mainly a theater, but the stage productions have caught on in local theater troupes, and it gives a venue for some of the local talent.
So as we go around the circle or the square, there's a building right there that I'm sure has a history, but there was also a hotel there?
The parking lot was actually the site of our first log cabin in town. It was a tavern and an inn. Mr. Croxon built that in 1808. That evolved from there to selling it to a Mr. John Sturgeon, who made a hotel out of it and ran the tavern also, until his death, when his wife Granny Sturgeon took over. And she, from history, was quite a cook and was well known to all the travelers around. Their son put a dry goods store beside it too, to serve the locals. And that was sold then to a Mr. Greenewalt, who rebuilt it as a very large building and hotel, which still was a restaurant and had a tavern in it, and named it the Park House after his son Park. Originally, the streets were named Main Street and Main Cross Street. Main Cross Street at that time, after 1871, became Park Avenue.
So now you've lost that hotel, that's too bad, but you still have so many. Next, around that corner, what was that building?
Next door was the Edward Jones building today, was the old Isley building, built in the 20s. Before that, it was a large two-story general store where you could buy anything from clothes to cement to food.
So you were just talking about still the Edward Jones building, and there was an Isley's next to that, is what you're saying?
That building was the Isley's.
Oh, really?
It's remodeled,
I wondered
covered
because,
over.
Yeah, that point was unusual next to the rooftop.
And that was new in 1920s, new fireproof building material.
Okay.
It was made out of brick. It actually was tested because the little frame building beside it with the brick facade was a restaurant that burned in the 1950s, and it melded the plastic on the inside of the Isley building, but it didn't do much harm to the Isley building.
Wow, wow. So then across the street and on this corner, what was this?
That was actually the general store also.
So you had stores and taverns. There was a lot of that going on these corners.
There was. On this site that we're standing on, where the log cabin was Joe Wallace, was another general store, but he had a smokehouse, and it burned down in 1844. His manager bought the goods from him because Joe was no longer interested, so he built a two-story frame and opened a general store on that side of the street. The small building beside that, there was a dentist's office in that corner for over 100 years. Wow. Starting with Dr. Barclay to Dr. Nelson, and ended up with Dr. John Hanna up into the 90s. And it's been used for other things. Actually, a storage area for the Red Cross when the Ohio River flooded in 1936, and they used that as one of the points to store some of their goods that they had for all of the people down there. The gas station is kind of unique with its roof line. Yes, that was.
How would I know that? And you're like, the gas station. It doesn't even remotely look like
a city service gas station with its original
It's a great
building.
roof, though. That looks really good.
It is.
Well, originally it was a tiled roof.
Oh yeah, those little the curved tiles.
The glazed tile. And one of the most interesting things, I think, is Doc Pritchard had bought this piece of land. Never looked at anything. Received a packet back in the day, many years ago, and one of our most prized artifacts in the basement is the original platting of Columbiana, and which was this square by Joshua Dixon. And here it was in there. It has the seal from the county registrar. The whole, I mean, it's a treasure. He never realized it was there.
Oh my gosh. And so for a long time, that was probably the only gas station in town, right?
This used to be a state route that came in Park Avenue and went north. And it was a very busy street at that time. And we had a few gas stations. There were a couple others that were north of the square here. In fact, 4 more that were within a short walk distance from
And
each.
the deeds of the 1800s calls this street Pittsburgh's Road.
Oh, okay.
And because it would have traveled to Pittsburgh.
Sure. Why is it important to preserve history here in Columbiana?
It's important for each community to have their history and not let it just be in moldy books on a shelf. You have to get it out and get the word out to everyone, so people have a heritage, know where they came from and how much work it took to get to where we are today. Things just didn't happen that we have nice paved roads, that we had to suffer through muddy streets and bricks and even wooden planks as used for sidewalks at times. And just that evolution is important to let everyone know, and especially the younger generation know, so they know it just wasn't, they weren't born into this with the silver spoon.
Yeah.
That a lot of work went in to get to this point.
Obviously, a lot more could have changed. I know you said it looks a lot different than when you were kids, but a lot is still here that's been here for a long time. Why do you think so much has been preserved where other towns maybe have lost or changed their downtown?
We've treasured our past, and an active historical society from the early 50s in preserving a lot of these homes and our downtown businesses. You couldn't be out of business for very long. I mean, would you tear down a building like Primitive Gatherings and tie up your whole business to build a new building?
Yeah,
You know,
right.
So
use the old ones. It works
that's
out.
right. And they were built better,
Yeah.
and they have a good history.
So Jay, let me ask you, what do you think the legacy of Columbiana is?
There were 10 different buggy makers in town at one time. We were the largest manufacturers of buggies back in the late 1800s. We've never put all of our eggs in one basket. Most recently with the NRM closing, which employed 800 some people of not just this community but surrounding. And when that went down, the city felt it. And we diversified from that and getting a lot of smaller shops, a lot of smaller businesses. And that, I think, from that angle, has helped preserve everything.
And really, we haven't even talked about the fact that my experience with it, and others too that visit it, really have fun shopping, little antique
Correct.
stores and little restaurants and doing all of that up and down Main Street. That's a whole other part of this.
The city itself, Main Street, is reinventing itself. And I mean, it went through that in the 1800s, it went through it in the 1920s, the 50s, the dress shops, the stores. These people are taking the buildings and they're trying to do something good with them, and they're not out to make a killing. They're just out to raise their family in Columbiana and have a good business that everybody wants to come to,
So-
which we do.
One more time, let me ask you, or one more question, let me ask you, why'd you stay? What do you love about it? One at a time.
You never left, I left.
But why'd you stay?
Mainly because I got a job here, and that kept me in town. I went to school for something completely different and ended up staying, rising up through the ranks of the city hierarchy, if you will. And the town is in me. I enjoyed being here. I enjoy helping people, and that has a small community feel. No matter how big we get, we still have a lot of people that care about each other. And if something happens, we all come together as a community, which happens a lot across Ohio and this region.
It's where family was. And not only just immediate family, but the family of friends,
The community treasures as far as what we did. I mean, my grandparents would walk us uptown, they'd tell us the stories.
it was the good memories that bring you back and keep you here.
You're welcome to visit the Log Cabin Museum, but the hours are limited. However, you can find them on social media. The Society has 2 Facebook pages full of history, because this is Columbiana. And this is Vision of the Valley. I'm Tricia Perry.